on the tracks. And to my left is You're My Hour head football coach of You're My Hour Airport Eagles. That's Coach Shane Fiddler back for round 2. He didn't get enough of this once, so he's back again. This time championship edition. Just coming from basketball, how'd our boys and girls do?
Girls went down, tough fourth quarter, got some foul trouble, but boys were up when I left. So
there we go.
Hoping to get some good reports here soon. Appreciate you having me back.
We got some high school basketball that we'll dabble in. Lou Bajak is doing yeoman's work, getting everything with basketball while he's covering these games. Lenora Sellers is in town. He is always in town. I mean, he lives here, but he is at the game, the South Carolina High School League 4A state championship game between Westside and Florence. That game is active right now, and at the half, it is 21-14 Rams. And if you're a Gamecock fan, I'll just note that there are 2 big names that you're interested in here, both of them on the offensive side of the ball. That is wide receiver for South Florence, Jaden Sellers, who is going to be on campus, and Westside Ram quarterback Cutter Woods, who will, as of right now, most Carolina fans are thinking, okay, you got Lenora Sellers for another 2 years, and then there's that guy. He's the next one. We'll see about all that. Don't ride your hopes on an 18-year-old. They'll let you down. Just don't do that yet. But enjoy the ride. There's a good ball game going on. I thought, Coach, that this was going to be the best game of the weekend. I thought both of these teams just so evenly matched offensively, and weapons everywhere. I mean, there's talent at every level on championship weekend. But between these 2 ball clubs, I thought it'd be a 7 to 10 point game, and right now it's showing itself to be that.
Yeah, no doubt. 4A football in our state, top to bottom, might be the toughest. As someone who coaches at that level right now, and you just look at the playoff bracket and you look at the matchups they've had week in, week out to get here. And, last year we played Westside in the playoffs on their state championship run. They beat us up at their place. It was close going into half, but then they kind of got away from us there just because of the depth they have. And I remember Cutter Woods sprinting out to the right on a play and throwing the ball all the way to the other hash on a rope, probably 30 yards down the field. And I didn't know if I ever seen anything like that in person. I looked at my wife on the side, she looked at me, she's like, wow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they got great players everywhere. South Florence, big kick return here to get themselves in great field position to start the second half.
Yeah, they've got great field position now on the west side of the 50, and they're down by 7, trying to battle back here. This would be the first. I don't want to say that because the Dutch Fork Somerville game earlier today was a really good one. So let's make sure that I check myself there. If you've missed any of the state championship action to this point, let me catch you up. It started yesterday, Thursday afternoon. And Coach, Uncle Lou Bajak didn't like me very much saying this, but I'm going to say it because, he doesn't control my mind. The fact that we're playing high school football championship games on a Thursday afternoon at 2 is problematic because people can't get there. I know we got to fit them all in. I'm with you. I understand that. It's just unfortunate that we're playing games at Thursday at 2. Number one, you guys are still in school until what, next Friday?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's that, and there are people who work. Now, ultimately, take a day off, I guess, if you're able to. But this game, 2 o'clock yesterday, Clinton and Barnwell. And Clinton, the Red Devils, all over the Warhorses, 35-6. They are your 2A state champions. And what's old is new again. Abbeville and Cross played last night. Abbeville, I said this to Terry the other day, Coach, that Abbeville, if you're a fan of old school professional wrestling, not on the mat wrestling, but professional wrestling, you can compare Abbeville to like Ric Flair. They're just always there. They're always really good. I'm not saying they're dirty or anything. I'm just saying, when we look at this show every week, and when we start on August the 20th or 13th or whenever it is, I can always count on Abbeville winning games by about 20 or 30. Now, they did slip up against Batesburg-Leesville this year, which I still consider a great shock, but Batesburg-Leesville, played it out pretty well. Had a great season. Abbeville beat Cross last night, 58-20. Hold up. They were down 6-0. So they outscored Cross 58-14 after that first possession. 58-14 in a state championship game.
Yeah, the opening kickoff, Cross ran it back pretty good. Down to the 20, I think, and then they put the ball in. Carmelo Jones, who we chose for the North-South team next week, scored a touchdown, and I gave him a great start. You couldn't dream up a better start if you're Cross, if you're Coach Sean Wright and the season they've had. And then, Abbeville went right down, scored, and then got a stop and scored, and another stop and a score and a pick and a score, and it kind of went. When I think of Abbeville, you look at those Division III NCAA teams like Mount Union and Wisconsin Whitewater and all them, and they're always in the championship. That's what I feel like with Abbeville.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of always in the championship, earlier today, 2:06 p.m. Now, this is a Friday, so I'm kind of okay with it. I mean, Friday's a little different. I feel like I work in downtown Columbia, and I can tell you that very few people work on Friday around these parts. So today at 2, Dutch Fork and Somerville. Now, I talked with Terry on the halftime show. If you missed it, that's the last time I'm probably going to be on there for a while. Terry's not going to want me back. I'm just kidding. But I said that game could be very close if Somerville turns it into a shootout. Because I'm old enough to remember that Somerville Chapin game. I'm also old enough to remember, Coach, have you ever heard of a team through this many games in a season, up until today, only giving up 77 points, period, 6 shutouts?
Against the teams they play on their schedule?
Irmo, Lexington, Chapin, White Knoll, River Bluff,
Gray Collegiate,
Spartanburg, twice.
Yep. Oceanside.
Who's
playing for a state championship.
Exactly.
Tomorrow.
All of these teams, they shut them out. Not all of them, but they're a really good defensive ball club. So I said, if Somerville can turn this into a shootout, I like their chances in a shootout. This game was not a shootout, but it was wildly entertaining, and it was 28-21 late. Somerville couldn't get a drive going. It went in reverse. It's 4th and 20. They punt. So now you're saying, okay, defense, we need one stop. They didn't get it. Dutch Fork actually scored, made it 35-21, and that's 3 straight and like the 11 billionth state championship for Coach Tom Knotts.
Well, I think the question you have to ask yourself is if Jaden Cummings, starting quarterback for Somerville, who's committed to Dartmouth, if he doesn't get injured early in the game, what happens in that game? Ian Rafferty, the head coach at Somerville, and they had such a great game plan going against that amazing defense that Scott Breswell, the DC for Dutch Fork, has, and they put their kids in the best position to have success today. And they had playmakers shine on both sides of the ball, but Dutch Fork, obviously, Coach Knotts, he's unbelievable. He's the best head coach maybe in the history of high school football in the country. If you just look at his results, I mean, just look what he's done in 2 states. Yeah,
he wins.
I love what he said after the game. He goes, "Yeah, we'll get back to work Monday, go for our 4th straight."
Because he lives for it.
Yep.
And there's something to be said, and I compared them, and I know everyone's yelling at their radio right now. You talk about that, fine, that they're really good. When you look at Dutch Fork's run, and the run they've had since, 2013, 2012?
Yes.
In this state, and you've been coaching in this state for that long. Yes. I compare it to Nick Saban's run at Alabama. I really do, because maybe you don't win the championship every year, but we don't have that conversation and not talk Dutch Fork.
It might be more like John Wood and UCLA.
Yeah.
Red Auerbach Celtics.
Sure.
Because in that run, the only championships they've lost were 2014 Hillcrest. Greg Porter's crew had a great season and got hot at the right time and beat Dutch Fork. Dutch Fork's quarterback went down state championship game.
Fort Dorchester once with DeCarrion? No, they beat them. They beat them.
Yep, they beat them. And then they lost to Gaffney in 2020 when their kicker got hurt and they missed some extra point field goals.
Right, exactly. So you're looking at a team that could be on a miraculous run. Now, ultimately, that's a dart from Cutter Woods. It's incomplete, but that was a dart. I've never seen it. He was rolling to his right. We're watching this on the television in studio. Rolls to his right, throws it across his body, and it's on. It is on his man downfield.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
That is insane.
He's special. He really is. And great get for the Gamecocks.
There are how does one not catch that ball? I remember watching Lenora Sellers in that state championship game. Well, interestingly enough, South Florence is in this one. I remember watching Lenora Sellers and thinking, Syracuse?
Best high school player I've ever seen in person, Lenora Sellers.
Syracuse?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing, but you knew. And I think we all kind of saw, okay, this guy's something special. And he is. I love those who try to detract from him saying he's just a running back who can kind of throw. I'm like, oh, you said the same things about Cam Newton. I got you. touchdown West Side.
Unbelievable play call by Brian Lane right there. And just a read by Cutter Woods to flick it out there when they had numbers on the edge and get it to a great playmaker in space. Block perfect. Huge play for the West Side.
How difficult is it as a coach when you're trying to figure out, okay, I've got a quarterback who I know can get the ball around to a bunch of different guys. How difficult is it in a high-stakes game like this where you know you're pretty evenly matched up to get the ball to your guys in space?
Well, it is hard because the other team game plans too.
Yeah.
And we saw that some this year. We had a playmaker at wide receiver, and when we get into the game, we try to give them the ball early, and we would, and they would scheme for them, and they would take them away late. So you got to be able to be balanced and get the ball to different guys, and then open up that space back up.
Right.
West Side, they're in a great position. They got so many guys that can make plays.
Sure.
That if they try to get the ball to number 1, they cover him. Now they get the ball to number 5, or they'll hand it off, or do a quarterback run, whatever. They got so many options. Yeah. It's great.
It's impressive, the talent. Again, I consider this one of the best games of the weekend just because of the talent on both sides of the football. But back to Dutch Fork and Somerville really quickly. You mentioned something before we came on the air, and I want the folks to hear this. And that is, you were at Ashley Ridge before you came to God's country, and we appreciate you making that move with your family. What did Somerville do to test that defense, that Dutch Fork defense, a defense that a lot of teams we can say did not score on? They did not get scored on. What did Somerville do today to get 21 points and be in the game late in the fourth quarter?
Well, Jaden Kelly Murray, sophomore, probably the best sophomore in the state. A lot of familiarity with him from my time in the Low Country. They got him the football. I think he had the longest touchdown in state championship history. I think they said that earlier on a big vertical route, and then they got him the ball a little later for another score, and he had an unbelievable game. And when you get the ball in playmakers' hands, good things happen. I think Dutch Fork tried to cover him in a different way. They made some adjustments later to stop him, but Somerville did a great job scheming up, trying to get to the edge, get away from the interior pressure that Dutch Fork's defense potentially causes, and get out on the edge and let their quarterback get the ball to their playmakers. And that showed today with how many points they scored. But again, if Jaden Cummins, their quarterback, who we had selected for the North-South game next week, hopefully he's okay. Praying for him and his family. He's going to Dartmouth. You want the kid to be healthy, but if he stays in the game, doesn't get hurt, I'd like to see what happens in the rest of that. But
absolutely,
you look at this game here, you got a contrast of two styles between South Florence and West Side. Not to switch, I just, you see multiple tight ends from South Florence, and you see spread the field, fling it all over the place by West Side. I mean, this is a true battle of different types of schemes and philosophies, and they're going at it score for score. Yeah, and this is the kind of championship game that, I mean, I don't know where you fall on this, Coach, because you're a defensive guy in a lot of respects, but I know if your team's scoring 50 points, you don't mind. When you're in a game like this, which side of that clash of styles would you rather be? Would you rather be that South Florence team that's going to run more zone read, they're going to ground and pound you a little bit more, or would you rather be West Side that's spread you out, 1970s Monday Night Football style with the Dolphins and the Jets? Well, I want to be on the side that has the better players. That's fair. But in when we're doing 7-on-7 in the summer, the running backs get bored. Because we're just throwing the ball over the place. And I tell them, you're 7-on-7s in November in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, ideally, it's cold weather and championships are won in the trenches. You kind of want to be the team that runs the ball with efficiency. And to that point, I would like to be on that side of the ball, too, simply because you can do a little bit more ball control if you can handle their defensive front and keep moving. And South Florence is massive up front. I mean, just look at the push they're getting. Yeah, they got to push all the way and then dragging guys up to midfield. And by the way, I see that South Carolina State logo. I got to mention those guys are playing in the Celebration Bowl again. That's right. It's amazing. It's awesome for our state. Kudos to South Carolina State. That would be their second in, if they win it, 3 years. 3 years, because that was when Dion was at Jackson State before he went to Colorado, and he's in his second year at Colorado. So 3 years. That'd be impressive stuff. And great job by South Carolina State to get back to that bowl game and try to win themselves what's basically a national championship when it comes to HBCUs. Look at the college football in our state right now. You got Clemson, who made the playoff. You got the Gamecocks, who beat Clemson, are playing in the Citrus Bowl. In the best bowl, not in the playoff. It absolutely is. And then you got Coastal in a bowl game, and then you got South Carolina State playing in the Celebration Bowl, which has so much tradition and history. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great situation. All the time I tell people,
this little state in the corner of the country, in the southeastern corner of the country, is really underrated top to bottom across multiple sports and across multiple divisions. It's high school football here is as good top to bottom as you're going to find anywhere else per capita. Same with college football. I mean, sure, we don't have a pro team. And don't yell at me. No, we do not have the Panthers. We physically do not have them, not even a practice facility. So we're underrated in my opinion. South Florence is moving the ball. They're up to the 31. Do want to mention that later on in the program, we're going to have Coach Corey Fountain from the Clinton Red Devils calling in a little bit later on, as will Jamie Nichols, the head coach of the Abbeville Panthers. He'll be calling in. Both of those guys are calling in within the hour. Championship head coaches who won their state championships. We are, industry term, we are efforting Coach Brand and possibly Coach Wolford to talk about their matchup tomorrow night. Do want to mention that we do have 2 games tomorrow, and that's Oceanside Collegiate and Belton Honea-Path. They play tomorrow afternoon. And then tomorrow night, big game, Northwestern and Irmo. Points. In my opinion, I think that game, if you shouldn't do this because if you bet on high school football, the number calls you. But if you're thinking about it, I'll tell you this: take the over, because we talk about this game having talent all over the field with South Florence and Westside. Northwestern scores a lot of points, and it's weird to me to have a 4A team just be that high powered. And
5A D2 now.
Oh, yeah, 5A D2, pardon me, 4A back in the day.
Yeah.
My bad. So, yeah, 5A D2, which makes sense. But then Irmo as well. Irmo does play a little bit more, not Northwestern doesn't. Irmo does hang their hat a little bit more on their defense to go along with a quarterback and a playmaker like A.J. Brand and a wide receiver like Donovan Murph, plus a litany of others that don't get talked about. As you look ahead to tomorrow's slate, those 2 games, and we'll break these down more as we go. Which game are you looking forward to most tomorrow? 3A or 4A?
Well, just because
of 3A or 5A.
Just because of the local ties and relationships, obviously Northwestern and Irmo.
Yeah.
You got the 2 Shrine Bowl quarterbacks battling back and forth for a state championship. 2 great head coaches in Aaron Brand and Paige Wofford going at it for the trophy. You know, generational quarterback for Irmo and Aaron Brand Jr. And then Finley Polk is just in that classic line of Northwestern quarterbacks. So
and with a great name too.
Oh, unbelievable name!
Great quarterback name.
And that's going to be a fantastic game. I think it lines up perfect as the last game of championship weekend.
As it should. It's going to turn in a good performance. South Florence is driving right now. I'm telling you, you're watching this South Florence offense move, and I'm watching it, and I'm going, wow, that looks familiar. I feel like I've seen a bunch of this on Saturdays.
Yeah.
It's just a big physical quarterback. By the way, the running back, I missed his name. I'll have to get it in a second. Has about 140 yards rushing in this game already. There's another just read option.
Well, it looks like what South Florence has done to me is they've gone to extra offensive linemen. They got their tight end playing like a fullback type position, and they're just going forward. They're just making it a man's game. They're making it that playoff, cold weather, who's tougher game. It's a great idea by Coach Marlowe. Obviously, it's working, and they're slowing the game down. They're keeping the ball out of Cutter Wood's hands. And they're just leaning on that defensive line on West Side, and they're saying, tackle us.
Leaning on them. That's what you got to do. It's 2nd down and 8, 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, 1-possession ball game in the 4A state championship game. We'll keep our eyes on that. We'll continue to break down the games tomorrow, and we'll recap the 3 state champions that have already been crowned. More of the Love Chevy High School Scoreboard Show coming up on The Game. Well, welcome back in to the Love Chevy High School Scoreboard Show right here on the game. Justin Hall, Coach Shane Fiddler, Captain Dave behind the glass with you on Championship Friday. It's championship weekend, and we got state champions that have been crowned all the way across the board, and that started yesterday with the Clinton Red Devils getting a win over the Barnwell Warhorses, and we're glad to welcome in on the Lumos guest line head coach Corey Fountain of the Clinton Red Devils. Coach, first of all, congratulations. How you feeling a day later?
It feels great, man. I appreciate you having me on. The next day you always take up equipment, inventory, and everything, and it's a lot better after a win than a loss.
No doubt about that. And a win in the fashion that you had. So let's start with prep for that game. Obviously, you don't have – it's not like the college football playoff. They got a couple weeks before the first round, then you got another couple weeks before the second round. You guys are – it's very much like a normal game week for y'all. So describe that prep heading into that game against a very good Barnwell Warhorse team.
Well, it's actually a short week. I mean, we had a quick turnaround.
Oh, yeah, you are Thursday.
So Thursday at 2 o'clock, which that's normally – the good thing is we do normally go out to practice at about 2:30 every day. So we're used to playing in that sun. We're used to playing and getting going that early in the day. But, so it started out Friday night. We traded film. Coach Smith we had already talked. He said he always calls both coaches. So he called me the day before, and I guess he called Demetrius at Fairfield Central. And once the game was over, we knew what we were trading already, so we traded film. Offensive coaches usually watch it that night, and the defensive coaches, they watch it all day Saturday. But offensive coaches watch also Saturday, and then we get together again on Sunday. So we prepped up for that week. We try to treat it as much like a regular week as possible, even though we were playing on a Thursday. I know some teams practiced on Sunday. I just didn't feel like – I felt like that would get our kids out of their routine too much. So, a lot of them go to church. Some of them are involved in their church, and I didn't want them to feel obligated. So we just went about it as a normal week and like we were going to play an early game. So we just played on Thursday. So that's kind of how we did it.
Coach Fountain, Shane Fiddler here, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm great, man. Hey, great to hear from you. I'm looking at the road you went through to win this state championship.
A grinder, man.
Oh, my God. How did you – you had to play Pelion and then Chester and then Batesburg, Leesville, Fairfield Central, and then end with Barnwell in a short week. How'd you keep those guys healthy? How'd you guys keep the focus, keep going every week after every grinding game?
Yeah, I'm gonna go way back. So we started with a really hard non-conference schedule, and we did. It was a meat grinder. Our non-conference schedule was a meat grinder, and we lost to Woodruff. They were a really good football team, and then we had Lawrence, we had Newberry, we had Chapman, we had Daniel, and some guys were banged up, and we got them back healthy, believe it or not, during that hurricane period. So during the hurricane, we had about 2 weeks off, and our guys were able to we shortened everything up. We had some volunteer practices during that time, and we had most of our guys come, but we didn't have to bang. We didn't have to, we weren't preparing for a team. So we got a lot of guys healthy during that break, and then we went through region, and then, preparing for a Chester team, that was a really good Chester team who had kind of battled the same type of stuff we had at the beginning of the year. I'm friends with Coach Floyd. What a great coach and great team. And he finally got a son back, and he got some other players back. So they were full force when we played them, and a really good football team. We were fortunate to beat them. And then we played Batesburg Leesville, an undefeated team. I'm very familiar with Coach Lawson because I've coached with him at Lawrence. And so I coached with him for, I think, 4 years at Lawrence. So I knew his team was going to be well prepared. Andy Harris, that also coaches at Batesburg Leesville, and Coach Prince that coaches at Batesburg Leesville. I know a lot of those guys, and I knew they would be really prepared, and they were a really good football team, and we made it through that team. And then we had to play Fairfield Central with the top running back, I believe, in the state. We had just faced Batesburg Leesville's running back, and he was a monster. And then we had to go against the two-headed monster in Fairfield Central with their quarterback who could run it, and their running back number 2 who was just a great player. And we were fortunate in that game with turnovers. That game really could have went either way. And this was the first time since I've been at Clinton that we started with the same players that we finished with, and that's key if you want to win a championship.
Yeah, shout out to your strength staff and your athletic trainers
definitely.
for keeping those guys right all year. That's awesome, Coach.
Coach, I want to mention.
Yeah, it was 100%.
I want to mention something. This is y'all's first state championship since 2009, and
Right.
We hear this from Coach Brand at Irmo quite a bit, and hear this from a lot of coaches. If you could, what is a win like this and a state championship like this? First time in 15 years. If I do quick math on the radio, it's not smart, but first one in 15 years. What does that mean to that community up there in Clinton?
There's always expectation in Clinton when you have coaches, Hall of Fame coaches like Coach Richardson, who won 6 himself. Then you had Coach Andy B. Young, who's a staple in the community. I mean, he is still always around. He supports us. He comes by, speaks to us, but you know, he won one, went to more than that. And, you know, they're used to winning there. And then there was a dry spell, and I knew I was coming into a situation where it wasn't so good, and they hadn't been good for a while. And, you know, as a coach, that change is uncomfortable. But, you know, I feel like God put you in comfortable positions, you know, to have you lean on him. And, you know, I was able to put together a really good coaching staff of guys who gelled. We're not all alike. There's a lot of differences among our coaching staff, but it's great. It's not a lot of guys, not yes men. We debate, we deliberate, we make sure we got all our T's crossed and I's dotted. And I'm fortunate and blessed to have a great coaching staff. And then the players, you know, everybody talks about this team, but this team would never be if the first team didn't put the work in, and that second year they didn't put the extra work in, and the third year everyone bought